Test.
No, it still has this. You don't need to hear me that well. Hello?
Testing.
Yeah, it's still got the echo going.
Testing.
Got the echo.
Testing.
That's good. Would you? Okay.
Can move on to agenda adjustments, or does any member of the board want to adjust the agenda or change consent item to a discussion item?
I had a question on 4.7 that I wanted to ask, so I'll take that off.
Okay. Anyone else?
No. I'll move the, wait, public comment.
We haven't gotten there yet, yeah. Public comment on any matter that's not on the agenda today that pertains to the district.
I thought you were getting public comment on the consent agenda.
No. You guys, I'm running the meeting. So Jim, did you have something that you wanted to bring up? Make sure it's turned on. It's a little button.
There you go. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Jim Anderson. I'm the sitting member of LAFCO. And since I didn't get the over the 50% vote, there's a runoff election. So I apologize for not making the last meeting to speak. But I'm here now to introduce myself. Some of the board members I sit with Rochelle currently. I've sat with, before, and Jennifer and I sat on the Substance Abuse Commission for numerous years. So my name is Jim Anderson. I'm a lifelong county resident. I currently live in the San Lorenzo Valley. I've lived in Capitola and Santa Cruz. I've been with the Felton Fire Protection District since 1973. And in 1999, I became from a firefighter to a board member, and I've held that title since then. I also sit on the Mount Parks Foundation as a board member since 1999. We're a 501c3 that does educational and interpretive funding for the state parks. Not on my former resume, but I take care of the Felton Cemetery. I dig the graves, I set the headstones, I mow the grass and stuff for the last 9 years. I was partners with a partner of mine in the wine business for 10 years here in Santa Cruz County. We just sold it. My wife's now happy that she's not a wine widow. And I've sat on the redevelopment oversight committee for the last few years. I've served 2 years on the sheriff's advisory. My career was in senior management and telecommunications, and all about that. So I have 3 grown daughters that were all educated here. One works for the county of Santa Cruz at probation, one works in Butte County in social services, and my other one lives in Monterey, and she's a hairstylist. So that's it in a nutshell. I put my heart and soul into every board I've been on. I've been on most of them for a long time. And I feel it's a very collaborative group. One of the things that's come up in here is about experience. And if you could imagine LAFCO without Rochelle Lather on it, with her background from the county, it's really a help, and is mine in the fire service, because we deal a lot of that. And firemen and water people go hand in hand because we use water to put out fires, right? Mm-hmm. So we know about drafting and pressure and all those kind of things. So I'm available for any questions you might have about me.
Kevin, thank you.
Thank you.
I learned a lot about you.
Well, there's no secrets about me. You're going to run into somebody that knows me after all my years.
Yes, thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Are there any other,
I've
is
seen your name.
there any other comment? Okay, so then we can move on to the, oh, you do. Okay.
Had to check through the agenda again, make sure. I just wanted to agendize, I just wanted to quick answer the question of what happened to the Clearwater Soquel building design. Can we agendize an update on that? The outside,
The aesthetic additions.
the aesthetic addition. Yeah, it's not serious, but I just like it to come up sometime. It's been a couple months.
And that's not the education operations building, but the
No,
tank. Okay.
Yeah, I figured that will take a little bit of time to unfold.
Yeah. I'll just say that we don't currently have an update from our design builder from when you've seen. They're focusing on other things right now.
Is this, can we discuss this?
We will schedule an update with you guys
Yeah, no,
when it's
Thank
available.
you, Taj.
It's not a hurry, it's just a question, but that's why I asked to agendize it.
Okay, so now we are on the consent agenda. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we will move it on to the board to discuss anything that is not substantial. Item 4.7 will be put at the end of the agenda. Okay, there's no discussion, so is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll move the consent agenda items except for 4.7.
Second.
We're used to her seconding. So. We have a motion and a second. Do we have it's a voice vote, right? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So it's unanimous. So now we are at reports. Is there a general counsel report?
In the interest of time, no report this evening.
Oh, thank you, because, yeah, I appreciate that. So we are at business items. 6.1 is to approve a conditional will serve letter for Cabrillo College. The report's by Taj Dufour.
Yes. Hi.
Question and answer.
We do have Dr. Matt Wetstein here. He's the president of Cabrillo College. Matt, if you want to wait for my report, I don't have a very long report, but as I think the board, you probably read the report and looked at some of the renderings and other supporting documents. Cabrillo College is proposing they got funding for a partnership, I think, with UCSC and Cabrillo for a housing development in their south, near the freeway, south part of their campus, as well as a daycare. And so we have infrastructure in that area to serve this, and part of the packet includes a water supply, a demand calculation, and it ranges between 20 on the low end acre feet a year to about 38 acre feet a year. So at this time, staff's recommendation is to approve a conditional will serve letter to allow the college. They do take a different path through development. They go through the division of the state of the architect, and so it's not your traditional county building permit process. But we were in touch with them early on, and we'd like to get the board's consideration of a conditional will serve at this time.
First, don't we get public comment?
Fine. Anyway, I was just had a question for Todd. Whenever you want.
Okay. I've got it all written down, the order I want to do it. I have to be flexible. So we have public comment.
So my name's Matt Wetstein, and it's a pleasure for me to be here and address the board. First, I want to express thanks to Taj and Melanie, and before Melanie, Ron, for the cooperative arrangements that we've had ever since I became president at Cabrillo College. both in conversations around Pure Water Soquel, monitoring wells on our campus. It's always been a great partnership, and so we're grateful for the assistance that we've received from staff for the agency. We have a great project. We have state funding that pays for a large percentage of it. 60% will be backed by a state of California bond that gets issued by UC, and will be going out for another bond on public financing for the rest of the project. So it's about a $180 million project all told. We have $111 million committed from the state of California for this partnership. And as Taj indicated, we have the ability to, in fact, Soquel Creek already serves part of our campus with a connection. So we're lucky to have that ability to connect for this project, and just very grateful for the assistance that we've received. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so now do we have any board comments? Question or comment? Yeah.
Go first.
So it looked like, they used various information to come up with the low and the high estimate for water use per person. And some of the stuff was kind of old, but I wanted to ask Taj how you felt about, it seemed to me like the one they came up with seemed reasonable, but I wanted to see how you felt about that.
Well, I think it'll be one of the first in our district to have this type of use. I think, they did compare that to some of UCSC. They have a lot of the background and basis for the demands that they use. So I think it's a good estimate. Yeah, they didn't have a low and a high for the daycare. They kept that at 1 acre foot. But maybe that's just based on the head count,
I think one thing to note on that, and I know Shelley, it's one of her past passions to really kind of look at water calculations, was that even with the low and the high calculation, there was also some notation in the water impact assessment related to the existing water footprint with the irrigation of the field. That was not part of that 21 to 38 acre feet calculation, as well as just, I think, recognizing the demand projections that were included in the urban water management plan and our ability to kind of, I think, incorporate this demand because it's already part of those projections.
I think you must have some questions.
Just a question, curiosity, Matt. What is there a set price for these units? They're going to be at a low price, so students can afford them.
Yeah, one of the nice features about the state funding that we received is by taking the state grant through the statutory provision that is provided through, the college has to provide the rooms at first option to homeless students, veterans, students who are transitioning out of foster care. And those students have to guarantee that they stay enrolled in 12 units or more and be making good progress on their academic studies. In exchange, we as a college, in taking the money, have to set the rent at a certain, I think it's 30% of 50% of the average median rent in the area. So right now, what that's penciling out to be is about $960 per unit or per bed per month for the students to pay for, which is well below, as you all know, the rents that are out there in our community. So these will be tremendously affordable apartments for students of the most need who get first crack at the apartments, and then we open it up to other students. And then if we can't fill our beds, then UCSC has the ability to come in and sort of waterfall into beds that we may not be able to fill. But based on our demand studies and UCSC's demand studies and the price, we feel very confident that students will be jumping to take these apartments.
For sure. And just a couple comments. One, that I read through the draft report, and if it still is in draft, on water supply analysis, it includes, it's saying in 2024, Soquel Creek Water District continues to implement conservation programs, yes, and explore other supply sources, yes, including surface water transfer, stormwater capture and recharge, and a local desalination project, no. So if you're able to strike that, we're not pursuing that anymore.
That's why I said some of it's old information.
Yeah, exactly. And Melanie, you talked about the urban water management plan and the projected demands, and boy, were we off. It's 500 plus acre feet higher, almost 1,000 acre feet higher than what we're actually using, or what the projections are.
So we're using less.
A lot less.
We're using, and then of course the urban water management plan is a planning document that gets
Right.
updated every 5 years. So we're going to be
That Cabrillo and UCSC were able to pull off some housing at an affordable rate.
You know, based on your assessment, is that going to be enough beds? It says 624 beds. Excuse me. 686. Oh, okay.
686 is the outward upper bound that we would go to. The funding that we've acquired at the state level allows us to build around 624, 625 essentially. But the way that the units are structured, you could have quads that, you could sort of size out some of those apartments to go up to 680, but that would be sort of the upper range of that facility.
Yeah, we can't do this kind of a project. Stunk as a community, I think.
It's rather large, and I think once people see the scale of it, it's addressing a big need, and it will be a big win for our students.
Jennifer, did you have?
I just wanted to say I was so excited to see the daycare facility, 6,000 square feet. I was like, yes.
So the one comment I'll make on that is not state funded. The way that we had to apply the formulas work where the more beds that you can get and sort of they rated it on a per capita cost on beds. So the child care center is going to be built on fundraising, philanthropy, government grants. So we've been able to secure congressional funding through Jimmy Panetta's office for about $1.7 million. We had a private donor, anonymous donor, give us $500,000 to support that. But we felt from the start that knowing that students who are going into the residence hall are, in some cases, we have as many as 20% of our students who have children. It would not make sense to build housing for our students if we didn't have daycare on site for those students. So we're going to get there, but that's a nice feature of the project that we really are excited about.
Yeah.
I have one more comment.
Yeah, just, I was curious if, previously I know Cabrillo's had an early childhood education program. So is that going to work with the daycare center and be a training ground kind of?
Short answer, yes. It's a way to double the size of our capacity to serve our student body and also potentially have another lab environment, clinical experience where our early childhood students can go and do observation and also be learning as a work-based learning site.
I took those classes like 35 years ago.
Great. That's great. And you had one more, Bruce?
Just another comment. It's gratifying to be able to approve this because we have Pure Water Soquel going online later this year. And if this had come before the board 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I don't think it would be approved. So it's nice to be at a place where we can do this.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
I'll move
Okay.
I'll second.
So to authorize issuance of a conditional worth.
for up to 686.
Okay, thank you. So you made the motion and you,
I Seconded.
So is it a voice vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. So next is the conditional will-serve letter for 880 41st Avenue. And it's a report by Taj.
Yeah, this is a little bit down towards the ocean on 41st. I don't know if you're familiar with where the old Chill Out Cafe was. It's the lot next to that. And the applicant is proposing to construct an 8-unit hotel at that location. There's frontage on a water main and adequate pressure. And the applicant has met with staff to understand the water capacity fees and other deposits necessary for this type of project.
This came before us before.
I don't know.
I don't remember.
I don't.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, if you have that memory, I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay, so since we don't have any members of the public here, we don't have public comments. So did you have more to say, Carla?
No, but I was thinking it was fine to approve it then. And are there any changes? I guess you don't. Originally submitted.
It's proposed as an 8-unit hotel
It does
project
say
tonight.
7-unit here, though.
Previously?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's what I remember.
I just had a question on estimated water use, acre feet.
Yeah, it's on the margin of the 1 acre foot that the board asked to look at projects. It's not more than like 2, but more than 1.
And how long does it take for something like this to, be built? I guess we have our process, and it's their option of when they build it. Is that the idea?
Yeah, this may go nowhere. It depends on their funding and, of course, approval through the state. And I'm not sure, this is a hotel project, which is different than a housing project that I think we've seen a lot of movement on recently in our county and city. But it's hard to say. We've approved projects like this. They've just stalled, and other ones have moved forward.
Yeah, the will serve's usually the first step
Right.
to even going towards getting a coastal permit and environmental permits and all of that.
Yeah, there is no real infrastructure involved. It would be just a service line and probably a fire service. So pretty low impact as far as our staff effort to oversee the infrastructure.
Are there any other questions or comments? So it's pretty much the same as last one. Do we have a motion and a second to authorize issuance of a conditional will serve?
Oh, do you want me to move on that one?
Did she say?
Standard conditional motion to approve a standard conditional will serve letter indicating the district will serve the
Yeah.
Um, on 880
In
41st.
a second, voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? So it passes unanimously.
Again, it's nice that we have Pure Water Soquel and can approve these things.
Yeah, it's not so painful.
It's also nice to provide vacation housing. Isn't
Yeah, yeah,
that can be used for housing.
that's true. Okay, so the next item is 6.3. We're going to receive information on accessory dwelling unit metering. And the
We're gonna
report will be by
switch.
Shelley. Shelley Flock. Is it on?
So, thank you. So back in November, we came to the board with an update on water capacity fees as related to accessory dwelling units. And there was a request at that meeting to come back later on with an update on what's going on in the state of California with ADUs, as well as locally, and a comparison of our requirements for ADUs, most notably separate metering, and how that compares to other local agencies. So we've put together some background on accessory dwelling units. There's various types of units, including conversion, junior ADUs, the tiny homes on wheels, which we also talked about earlier last year, and then the new construction ADUs. And those are really the ones that we're focused on, because our separate metering requirement only applies right now to the new construction ADUs. By law, that's the only one that we can charge water capacity and connection fees for. So the memo has a table, or sorry, an attachment that does show the permitted ADUs in the county over the last about 12 years or so. And you can see that there's quite a few ADUs permitted, and those numbers are increasing. In fact, that's the most common development type that we see in the district. You don't see all of the conditional will serves that come through, or the unconditionals for those, because they have a low water demand. But we've permitted or issued unconditionals for 29 ADUs since 2014, and 31 ADUs are currently in our queue with conditional will serves. So our separate metering requirement, we've required separate metering for ADUs and basically all residential units and commercial units for many years. I think that goes back to 2003. The summary table on page 2 of the memo does lay out the separate metering requirement for the different types of ADUs, and notably the new construction. Those are the only ones that require the separate meter from the primary residence. And the cost of that new water capacity fee has substantially decreased since November, when we changed the methodology and went to a fixture unit calculation for those. It now is about $3,500 to $9,000 based on those fixture unit counts. And that's down from, I think it was $22,000 for a 5/8 inch meter, and half of that, or about $11,000 for a 5/8 inch restricted. So comparing us to other agencies that require installation of separate meters, we have the city of Santa Cruz that does, and they require it for detached accessory dwelling units. And then the city of Watsonville, if those units are over 750 square feet. There's a couple other agencies that don't require the separate meters, but they do, I believe, look at the ADUs, the plans and the designs for the ADUs to assess whether the existing meter that serves the primary residence is adequate for capacity for adding on one or more accessory dwelling units. So that's a little synopsis of what other people are doing in the area. We did also put together a table that has the features of ADUs with separate meters versus those that don't. And we looked at billing, fairness, water conservation, leak detection, installation costs, ongoing fees, the service control and assistance, and water pressure. And you can look at that as features or pros and cons, things to consider if we were going to consider lifting our separate metering requirement. And then we've also identified separate metering issues that could arise if we did lift our requirement. So those are shown, the bullets there. Several ordinances would have to be updated. There is a need to take a look at our billing system and how we categorize multifamily properties versus single family, because multifamily gets the number of, for each unit that they have in the development, they get a billing tier. So if there's, 5 units in the multifamily complex, all 5 of those units get a tier 1 and a tier 2, et cetera. We would need to take a look at that and see if there's any rate impacts, or if we had to coordinate that with another rate study and what that would result in. And then there's the new bill, Assembly Bill 1033, which went into law in January 2024, and that allows cities and counties to opt in to this. It's not a across the board thing. They have to opt in, and that would allow for ADUs to be sold as separately as like a condominium. And so that hasn't really taken off a lot in the state of California. San Diego may be looking at it. But locally, the city of Santa Cruz recently did decide to opt into that requirement. So that could, impact, what if the property was sold off and it was master metered, the ADU was on the same meter as the primary residence? How would that be impacted? So would they form a HOA? And I think that's the way that the city of Santa Cruz might be looking at it is, I think there's a CCR covenants, something, and restrictions where they form together and they share the utilities. So, that would mean that they might not necessarily, under that agreement, have to put in a separate meter. So how would we deal with that? Would we require it at point of sale or not? Lots of things to consider there. And then lastly, there's a need to look at financial impact and do a legal analysis of any proposed revisions. And there's a lot of detailed work involved in that, and we could do some of that. But if we really did a deep dive in it, it would be because you guys are really interested in eliminating the separate metering requirement. We wouldn't want to put a lot of resources into investigating that unless there was a real need to look into it, just given our resources. So at this time, the recommendation that staff has is that we maintain our existing policy, but that's really up to the board. And the actions tonight are just to receive the information.
So who wants to go first? Oh, there's no public members, so we don't have any public comment. We'll move to board discussion.
I'd love to add just a quick comment or two on, I did a lot of research on the Assembly Bill 1033, which permits the counties to sell the ADUs separate and for counties to opt in. So it actually seems to be a real trend, unlike what you said, Shelley, because San Jose opted in July of 2024. Santa Cruz opted in. San Diego is under discussion and is expected to vote that way. And Santa Monica and also Berkeley right now are planning to opt in. So it seems to me like this is a big trend.
Jennifer, do you know what right now Santa Cruz does not have a county, Santa Cruz County does not have an opt-in. Do you know if
So
there's any,
my research said,
any information on whether that is something that's upcoming in the near future?
I don't know about the county. My research said that Santa Cruz City allows them to be mapped as condos, and then it allows the separate sale within the city. But as to the county, I didn't get that. I don't know.
Yes.
I was just, whether somebody buys the other one, that is one can of worms. But even if they're renting it to somebody, there's still a separate, it's going to be much more complicated if they don't have a separate meter. Because, and it also, I still like the conservation signal that a separate meter gives.
Exactly.
I'm not in a big hurry to get rid of our policy.
Well, I think you did a good job on describing and elucidating the policy.
Thank you.
Pretty clear.
Alyssa did a lot of the research and work, so
No, it
I'll
was
pass
a
that
great
on to
it
her.
was a great memo.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from it. Yeah. Well, Tom, you remember when we put the requirement in, and it was very strongly for conservation. And our district still is for conservation, but it's not paramount like it was when we didn't have a supplemental water supply. So I just wanted to make sure that we're not applying something that no longer applies. So would be advised to get that conservation signal. Make a strong argument for not having separate meters. It'll increase the cost. Taj, if you have to go into the street versus go off an existing line, 20,000, somewhere in that range. So it's going to decrease the number of these ADUs that go in, perhaps. But I can't make a strong argument for not having separate meters. I did some of these reasons that were the issues associated seemed like they weren't major. So that didn't deter me, like requiring multiple changes to the district ordinances. If the board were to decide that not having separate meters at some point in the future was the way to go, am I wrong? Is that a big lift to change an ordinance?
It's not a big lift, but there is some work involved. We do have to do public noticing and both before and after an ordinance is adopted or revisions to an ordinance are adopted. There's internal kind of making sure that all of our staff is aware of changes in our programs and policies. So, working with the front office staff that does the intake for accessory dwelling unit applications. There's updates on the website that need to be done. So it's not anything that we haven't done before, and it's not an insurmountable amount of work, but these things do add up. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to,
I understand.
yeah.
One question that it's probably due to my faulty memory, but wasn't the state interested in just eliminating capacity fees for even detached ADUs at one point?
I haven't heard of that per se.
Get that confused in the past.
They have made a number of revisions to that section of the government code, but so far they haven't gone as far as eliminating them for all ADUs.
I think it was the attached ones, because that was so complicated to do.
And it is the attached ones also under square footage limitation, which I forget. And then for those above that, those that we separately meter, they're required to be proportional based on the square footage or fixture count. And we chose fixture count when we made the update earlier this year.
Okay.
And then I have another question. The question I had was, in the report, it says, for Santa Cruz, separate water meters for detached ADUs will almost always trigger the requirement for new water connection and associated fees.
City of
So
Santa Cruz.
what does that mean?
I'm not sure, but that's exactly what they say on their website.
Okay.
We haven't talked to any staff there about what that means, but I looked at their website today because that was puzzling me, and that's what it said.
All right. Well, it was a great report, and I appreciate that you and Alyssa did the research, and I feel like I know what's going on in the ADU wild, wild west right now.
Yeah.
I expect it to change in the
Be
near
changed.
future.
Yeah.
I think that's something we can expect.
Thank you.
Okay, so then we can move to the next item. It's item 6.4 regarding the mutual aid agreement with City of Santa Cruz.
That's me also. The district's had a reciprocal water services agreement in place with the city of Santa Cruz since the early 1970s. And that has allowed for transfers between the two parties when there's been emergencies and systems have been out of commission or they had to do routine upgrades. And that's worked both ways over the years. We have 3 interties. 2 of them were used, from 1970s on to about, I don't know, when we installed the O'Neill Ranch intertie, probably about 10 years ago, I believe. And so now most transfers would be done through the O'Neill Ranch intertie. That's a much bigger intertie. And so this agreement before you tonight is basically modernizing the 1976 agreement to continue to provide or prepare for emergency preparedness and enhance regional reliability between our 2 agencies. So it also is asking for the board to approve the CEQA determination that we've made for the mutual aid agreement. And that determination says that the agreement is not a project under CEQA. And even if it was a project under CEQA, there's several exemptions that would apply. One is related to emergency response and preparedness. The others are related to small systems and, let's see, what's the other one? Operation, repair, maintenance, permitting, leasing, minor alteration of existing structures and facilities with negligible or no expansion of use. So there's a series of exemptions that would apply if somebody did challenge that it was a project. The agreement was approved, and the agreement was developed with help from Josh at BBK, and then we worked through the city, and they ran it through their legal counsel, and we came to an agreement on that. They presented the agreement to their city council on March 25th, and it was approved at that time. So tonight before you is to approve the agreement and make a finding that the CEQA determination is accurate.
So the motion would be to find it that that the agreement is exempt from CEQA.
Yes.
Okay.
Question, has anyone ever challenged this agreement?
No. Not that I know of. I mean, I've been here 15 years and yeah.
Because it's pretty well established. Well, we've been living with that, and I don't think we did a CEQA before even the exchange, the
Water transfer.
water transfer?
Yeah.
Yes, the pilot study. Yeah, there was a CEQA done on that in 2016, and then there was an addendum, I believe, to that done in 2020 when we extended the agreement for another 5 years.
So, but that was I agree that was a different project, but are we going to be able to incorporate some of that research that was done under those agreements?
I think this agreement, as well as the pilots, will help inform any other future agreements that the agencies might develop in the future for water sharing, water transfers and exchanges. Mm-hmm.
That will be taken into account in any future.
Yes.
I've got some questions.
The usual subs-
So it's, Melanie, you'll make the one that determines if it's an emergency? That it's up to the general, what, to the general manager?
Typically, it's because an agency, either our O&M manager or an O&M manager over at the City of Santa Cruz is calling and asking for water for temporary and for an emergency. That's how it's been done in the past.
And so is there a length of time that an emergency can happen? I mean, in the past, I'm just concerned how much water can go towards Santa Cruz.
Yeah, we haven't actually set an emergency in terms of only this duration. I think it has been on an as-needed basis. I know in the past, and I know something that Shelley has listed in the memo, it cites 2 examples. One was when they had a main break, and another time when their treatment plant went out. Sometimes it depends on how fast they can bring their system back up. Similarly, we've had to have water because there was an emergency. With the intertie between the City of Santa Cruz and Soquel Creek Water District, there is a meter, so we will be able to track and quantify the water that goes from one agency to the other.
And the agreement is that we'll give back the water within 2 years. So there's not an exchange of money.
Correct.
So the reason I'm asking about duration for an emergency is a drought considered an emergency?
We aren't foreseeing like a drought condition be at this point based upon just this mutual aid agreement. Am I answering your question right?
Well, probably we'd both need mutual aid if there's another drought, so I'm not quite sure.
I don't think we would, but I think the city would.
I understand what you're getting at. I mean, I think theirs would be more acute, that's all. And so we could,
Yeah, the city wouldn't be in a position to give us water during a drought.
Well, in the
Whereas
winters,
we potentially would be.
but I don't think this commits us to saying we're going to give you all the water you need for as long as you want it.
And
That's right. Yeah, I think importantly in 3.1 and 3.2, any request for assistance in an emergency situation is conditioned on the receiving agency's ability to provide it. And if staff ever felt that it would interfere with our ability to operate our system, we wouldn't have an obligation to provide the water and vice versa.
okay, so the intent is not to invoke this if there's a drought. It's more mechanical issues.
structure.
Yeah, infrastructure issues.
Earthquake.
Yeah. You would have to bring that up.
I know.
And then,
I'm just saying.
historically, it's been invoked, since the 70s, handful of times.
I don't think that we have a running record of that over the past decades, but most recently it's been a handful of times.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure I understood what the intent was and that you're basically the gatekeeper. So you would come to us if there were any questions about whether or not we were, whether our district was able to give water. Okay, thanks.
Would it be an okay time to make a motion to
It
approve
would be.
that? Okay, I will make that for both the finding number 1, which, is that it's not a project under CEQA, and 2, to authorize the general manager to sign the agreement.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. I take it it's another voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing there's none, it's unanimous. Next is item 6.5. Review and consider the 2025 aqua election and engagement opportunities available. And I wasn't sure who was going to give the,
Go ahead and present this one on behalf of the admin department. Both Emma and I put this one together. Basically, it's about, as you know, we're a member agency of Aqua, and Aqua has opportunities for engagement with the agencies. Listed in this item, we have is for our board to run for a seat as a president or vice president on the Aqua board. Aqua conducts their election for president and vice president for this year for the 2026-2027 term. The meetings are generally held bi-monthly on the last Friday of the month and coincide with the annual schedule determined by that board. There's also the opportunity to participate on the Region 5 board. Aqua has numerous regions throughout the state. The Region 5 represents Alameda, Contra Costa, Monterey, San Benito, San Luis Obispo, San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Barbara, Santa Clara, and Santa Cruz. Lots of the San and Santa places in the state. Region 5 participation typically is about 5 to 6 meetings a year. They also help participate and kind of oversee conferences and or site tours. There's also the opportunity to sit and attend on one of the Aqua committees, and I know our board has participated in that in the past. In fact, I think Dr. Daniels sat on the groundwater committee. But there's actually 13 standing committees. They're listed in your staff memo. And these committees are appointed for a 2-year term that begins January 1st of that even-numbered year. Right now, this information is traditionally presented to the board on occasion to elicit input and interest on being an elected member of the Aqua Board. So the near-term activities for you to consider tonight is to direct staff to return at a future meeting to adopt a supporting resolution for one or many of you to be nominated for the board, president or vice president of Aqua. That is a requirement of an agency if they would like to have their board be considered. Another one is for us to come back at a future meeting if you would like to be considered for the Region 5 board election. For the standing committee items and participation, that hasn't been released yet by Aqua, so we don't know yet exactly how the engagement will be, and we can come back on that when it's published. So tonight, really, we're just proposing the opportunities if you would like to run for president or vice president or sit on the Region 5 board.
okay, and there's no public members, so there's no public comment. So we can go to board discussion.
Yeah, really.
I was wondering, I think, president or vice president of the Aqua would be, people probably started out in the standing committees and then the Region 5 board, it would, and it must be, it's a vote, right? So.
Mm-hmm. It would be a vote. What happens is you would be nominated, and Emma, you can fill in on this because you read through that material with them. So we would do a nominating resolution, and then it would go out, and they're voted at the Aqua, right?
Yes, that's correct. And the structure of the Aqua board includes the vice chair and chair of the region committees, or the region boards, and then you also have some of the vice chair and the vice chair, or the chair and the vice chair of the committee levels. So it's a big board. It's about 37 people.
So anybody want to be president?
Not me. I think I would imagine the big water agencies are the ones that try and populate this board, not me.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, And
what about the
I'm
second?
also not interested at the Regional 5 level, but I might be interested in the standing committee. And standing committee?
No, but I've been to groundwater meetings. He got around the table, but even he was, there's quite a few members of that. I don't know if you have to be a member to actually go to the meeting.
Yeah, I was,
But I've never been on.
yeah. Well, there'd have to be some advantage to our agency to have one of us be on one of those boards. So
Yeah.
it requires some more research.
I guess bring back the information on the committees, but that otherwise I think we're.
Okay, thank you.
And now we have item 4.7 from the consent agenda, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
approve allocation from operating contingency reserve to fund a new network server.
Yeah, and I had a question about it. It was just, it brought up the options of like a cloud-based versus not cloud-based, and I just kind of wanted to understand the pros and cons of those since you brought it up.
Well, I'm no expert and I don't have a ton of information about it, but what I did learn is that there are options more than just storage. I think most of us are familiar with cloud storage. And this is an option where you actually lease a server on the cloud and you can configure it however you need. The issue there is there are, pros and cons, and I don't have that for you right tonight because it's not something we've done before. We do host some of our stuff in the cloud currently, data stuff, and some of our, some of that. So we do want to explore that, and we're going to, pick the option that's the most economical, but also provides service, rapid service and secure service. I think there is some concern about security when it's in the cloud and having the district's data available, in an instance where something goes wrong. So I'm sorry, I don't have a ton of information about that.
Since it came up, I thought I'd ask. It's fine.
And we've requested pricing for this scenario in the cloud serving, and I haven't received it yet. So
You always
we'll look
wonder
at
in an emergency which is going to continue working. Be another important question. Right. I mean, if
It sounds like one obvious thing would be the cloud would be based on an outside power source. In situ,
Yeah, and I think most of those server facilities probably have backup power. It's contingent on internet access and your bandwidth to access the data, and a lot of this is going to be centralized on building our vertical assets of the district. I think some of you are familiar with all of our GIS water mains. We've done a really good job of digitizing and linking as-built and photos to those facilities, but we still have yet to build up our pump stations, our tanks, our wells, up and down, I guess, vertically up and down. And so there will be, a lot more data to add to the suite and retrieving it, and whether the speed is going to be satisfactory or not, we have to research that. But we do know that we need to make a decision. We need to bolster our server capacity, whether it's cloud-based or physically based.
is there going to be any fire risk? Is this like going to be such a big concentration?
No. This will, if it's a physical server, it would be located at the district in our server room that's air conditioned. There's no battery. We have a generator for backup, but I don't think there'd be increased fire risk.
I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the OCR funds for a new server.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All And it moves, motion.
Thanks, Tosh.
Thank you.
And we're not having a closed session, are we, tonight?
We do have to talk to you about at least one item.
I like the way you asked. We're not really
We'll-
going to
we'll
do this,
record
are
Are
we?
we
Stop.
really going to do this? Okay, so
Like
then
4
we're,
hours and
Only
15
been
minutes
3 hours
into
and
this.
15 It's 3 hours and 15
yeah.
minutes.
So we will close the public session and go into closed session.
All right, good job. But you need a gavel.
You do. Let's pitch in and get her
You
one.
had one.